Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cinderella had reasonable reviews when it launched in London, and hopes were high. Well, maybe that's an exaggeration. Let's say there was hope that by the time it opened on Broadway, the renamed and rejiggered, as Americans like to say, bad Cinderella would be pretty good. If only. Now, most American reviewers don't use the UK's system of star ratings, probably just as well, since those that do gave it 1 star, in the case of the New York Post and the New York Theatre Guide, and, brace yourself, 2 stars from Time Out New York. Was Bad Cinderella in New York actually worse than the not bad Cinderella in London? Or was it the case that the British critics are just too kind, as some of the American critics unkindly suggested? I don't know about that. I mean, I'm not a big Lloyd Webber fan, but I thought the West End production was fun. One thing's for sure, the British critics are more polite. The American reviewers got those knives out, sharpened them and stuck them in. Keep watching and you'll see what I mean. So, was Bad Cinderella really that bad? I did like Adam Feldman of Time Out's description of the show's title as a minor victory for truth in marketing. Tempted as the critics must have been to use that B word, the reviewers found a few other objectives as alternatives to bad. Chris Rovzar of Bloomberg News came up with quite a few. Prurient, ill-conceived, nonsensical, overlong and icky. Matt Wyndham from AMNY also had the thesaurus out. Splashy, campy, lightweight, overcharged, strident and slight. Jesse Green in the New York Times, as you would expect from the home of journalism's highest quality writing, brought out compound adjectives. Sexed up and dumbed down. Oh, and surprisingly vulgar. Variety's Naveen Kumar damned it with faint praise, saying, "It isn't good." But it was Brittany Samuel of Broadway News who came up with the worst of all alternative adjectives. Unoriginal. Did anybody like it? Here comes a fairy godmother in the form of Deadline's Greg Evans. What Bad Cinderella does have is an amusing enough premise, an appealing score of songs that please in the moment, a gorgeous set design, performers that give it their all, and just enough rousing, good-natured moments. He even goes so far as to say, "It's certainly not the worst, Andrew Lloyd Webber." Okay, not exactly a ringing endorsement. By the way, the worst in Greg's opinion is Aspects of Love, about to be revived in London's West End. I don't expect we'll be seeing Greg jetting over for the opening night. The New York Post's Johnny Aleksinski agrees. This isn't Lloyd Webber's worst musical. But when you read the rest of his review, you may wonder what horrors could be worse than Bad Cinderella. Well, apparently, Starlight Express, Aspects of Love and Love Never Dies. So there's your benchmark. But what exactly was so bad about Bad Cinderella? Let's start with Johnny Oleksinski. He actually saw the show in its London incarnation. He didn't like it then, and he still doesn't like it now. It's a mess with multiple personality disorder, from start to finish during this perplexing and often dull fairy tale spin, and oh, does it spin. You're never entirely sure what you're watching or why you're watching it. He picks on one specific aspect. A fun enough horde of shirtless beefcakes called the hunks dance, thrust, do push-ups and lift weights. If you're confused, that's okay, so am I. In fact, confusion is a feeling many of the critics had. Variety said, it is a muddled and momentumless retooling of the familiar fairy tale in search of a coherent point of view, as if it were a glass-slippered foot. You see what he did there? It's easy to wonder who this new fable is for and what revised moral it aims to impart. David Cole from Observer said the fable of spunky iconoclasm versus glam conformity makes little sense and inspires zero sympathy. New York Theatre Guide's Amelia Merrill had a similar thought. Bad Cinderella is a flimsy, uninspired shadow that invests no confidence in its characters and chugs along without a thesis. Much of the blame for this is laid at the feet of the librettist Emerald Fennell. You get the sense that Fennell saw Wicked at an impressionable age and thought, I want to do that. And she has. And it's crappy. I can't help feeling David Coate could have come up with a less vulgar adjective, but I suppose if the crap fits. Nothing is suspenseful, nothing is made anew, and truly nothing seems all that bad. Now that was Broadway News, adding, No name change nor amount of glitz can conceal the reductive tropes in Weber's prosaic new musical. Entertainment Weekly's Emlyn Travis agreed. Nothing could save its overall storyline from slowly and sadly disintegrating like a pumpkin carriage after midnight. Vulture's Jackson McHenry commented, "It's such a mess." If they were confused by the story, that's nothing to my confusion as to the quality of the direction by Lawrence Connor. Was it energetically directed, directed sleekly, busily directed, or was the direction unrelievably pompous? Johnny from the New York Post did seem to be setting the bar high in his review when he said, "Lawrence Connor is no Hal Prince or Trevor Nunn." I'll be fair, Johnny, how many directors are as good as two of the greatest directors of all time? More specifically, Johnny's gripe was, he almost never stopped spinning his onstage turntable in hopes of hypnotising the audience into actually enjoying themselves. Well, my head's spinning too after all those comments. Maybe the fault lay with the central character. Cinderella is in the title, and much of the story inevitably revolves around her. Unfortunately, felt the critics, her character was one of the show's weaknesses. The musical collapses at the centre because Cinderella is an attitudinal bore. And for one thing, she's never convincingly unconventional. She just seems to shop at a different store at the mall from the others. That was Time Out New York. Cinderella is strangely passive and has little to no sense of personal agency, said Entertainment Weekly. Cinderella is a shockingly tame anti-heroine, agreed Broadway News. She could be witty or well-read or a communist, but she's just a joyless contrarian cipher, said Observer. This is no reflection on Linedy Genao, who plays Cinderella. Genao is given little help by book writer Fennell in creating an interesting or even particularly likeable protagonist, said Deadline. An appealing Linedy Genao tries to give the girl some gusto, but the material is floss-thin and the character inherently lacks star quality, added the New York Post. So, what about the elephant in the room? How did Andrew Lloyd Webber's music go down with the critics? Not to mention David Zippel's lyrics. Oh, and they did mention David Zippel's lyrics. Observer noted, Zippel's banal, awkward lyrics are custom-built for a composer whose pastiche is personality-free. Well, that's put the boot in good and proper, so let's quickly move on. Oh no, there's more. When lyricists are replaced by ChatGPT, Zippel will not be mourned. Ouch. And that wins my Gold Award for Insult of the Day. Anybody else got anything to say? Too wordy, said the New York Post. Sounds like Johnny would prefer less words and more music. After all, he did talk of Lloyd Webber's lushly orchestrated and tuneful ballads. Or, as Observer put it, he's all about the shouty anthem or sentimental earslop. Earslop? It seems the music is so bad the critics are having to invent new words for it. How did the ears of the Broadway News critic cope? He stuffs it with sweet songs that tickle the ears but never latch on to the heart. I'm getting worried about our reviewers' ears. What effect do the songs have on our man at Time Out? The score goes in one ear and comes out the other, without troubling anything in between. That sounds almost good. What about the New York Times? Did Jesse Green's ears survive unscathed? Bring earplugs. Uh-oh. Not just because the songs are so crushingly loud, the dialogue too would benefit from inaudibility. For that matter, bring eye plugs. The sets and costumes are as loud as the songs. If there were such a thing as soul plugs, I'd recommend them as well. Enough of the plugs already. Observer's David Coate took a cotton wool bud to the ear slop and came up with what I thought was an interesting analysis of Milord Sir Andrew's music. Lloyd Webber still has no ability, or desire perhaps, to write a bona fide musical theatre number. Not a single song written from a character's unique perspective that deepens our understanding of them or moves their story forward. Come on, this is Broadway's most successful composer we're talking about. Somebody must have something positive to say. Bad Cinderella at least offers a viable framework for a few of Weber's signature power ballads designed to showcase blunt sentiment and athletic vocals. Lloyd Webber's catchy in the moment melodies. The wonderful song Only You, Lonely You is the single best moment of the musical, which is unfortunate because it happens during the first 25 minutes. On the whole, the set and costume designer Gabriela Tilasova came out of the free-for-all quite well. Deadline talked of the eye-popping, lushly appointed royal settings. AMNY liked the sumptuous and colourful fairy tale costumes. As did Johnny Oleksinski in the New York Post. The sultry costumes by Gabriela Tilasova, better than they were in the West End, could conceivably be rented out to a Beauty and the Beast porno. Steady on, Johnny. Does your mother know what you get up to in your bedroom? Some of the cast helped rescue the critics from their ordeal. Grace McLean's Queen is a daffy delight, said Observer. Deadline loved a funny Grace McLean and called Carolee Carmello the production's indispensable crown jewel. Broadway News agreed. Carmello and McLean deliver sublime comedic performances. AMNY also praised the wickedly over-the-top and scenery-chewing performance of Carolee Carmello. As for Linedy Genao as Cinderella and Jordan Dobson as Prince Sebastian, Broadway News said, Genao and Dobson are great vocalists. Rolling Stone found Dobson's voice is breathtaking. Deadline said, Genao is a terrific singer, a real modern Broadway belter. An Observer said, Genao is a poor actor with a grating nasal voice and negative comic timing. I knew the compliments couldn't last. So, let's sum up. For Time Out, Bad Cinderella is a box of costume jewels, flashy but short on value. For the New York Post, Bad Cinderella would have been better off staying home than going to the ball. Sounds like Johnny would have been better staying home too. And Matt Weinman of AMNY wanted to go home. As the score descended into uninspired filler and the book became stalled and drawn out, I gave up hope. Let's leave it to Observer's David Coate to sum up the many fires that reduced Bad Cinderella to cinders. Pairing Fennell's quippy and shallow book with lyricist David Zippel's strenuously slangy lyrics and Andrew Lloyd Webber's lugubrious syrupy music might have screamed cross-generational synergy on paper, but it's a woeful marriage. Tick-tock meets grandfather clock. Gosh, is that the time? Well, thank you for watching, and please comment, like and subscribe to Theatre Reviews with Paul Seven.